Hello and welcome to this week's adventure in Chaos and Caffeine. This week we are featuring, I actually, apparently I asked for one thing but I got whole beans, so I had to order a very messy coffee pot that grinds the beans first and then it takes like an hour to clean it afterwards. But that's neither here nor there. So this is Aerial Resupply Coffee, and that's their website, aerialresupplycoffee.com. And this is the Moab, which is a double caffeinated medium roast. So we're going to try that. Next week we're going to do something different, but let's try it. It claims notes of almonds, chocolate, and bourbon. Okay, now again, Aerial Resupply Coffee is a veteran-owned company. I covered now last week the first one, and this week is the second one. Tacta-Squatch, of course, because, you know, the whole Rely-Squatch thing. But Aerial Resupply Coffee, they're out of Virginia, Charlottesville. Well, heck, I'm going to be in Virginia this week. In any case, let's see what it's like. Is there really chocolate and bourbon? And it's definitely a medium roast because it's almost like a tea. Actually, I brewed it a little strong so you can't see the inside of the cup. Hint of straining through socks. No, just kidding. No, it definitely, even for another Army guy, not too bad. I follow the owner on LinkedIn. He's a lot of fun to follow. A lot of pretty interesting veteran-focused stories and the like. So really, really good stuff. So this week, I want to talk about... Well, I was just at the IEEE annual Power Engineering Society meeting, or annual meeting. And we also mixed in Seagray. So I'm involved in a lot of stuff in both. For instance, in IEEE, I'm involved in a working group that looks at things having to do with the global grid code. And so, of course, the number one topic, it ground up a half a day of presentations in one area and a lot of discussion, was the Iberian Peninsula blackout from earlier this year. Well, come between May and June, in particular in June, the studies started coming out related to the actual fault. So this is the Spanish and Portuguese blackout that occurred. The whole thing happened within a day. But what stood out to me was something that I'd talked about in a recent MotorDoc vlog, one of my multiple hour presentations, in root cause failure analysis. In that case, I talk about bias. Now, the timeline is very telling. As a matter of fact, the actual occurrence that leads up to the blackout was first several weeks worth of variations in which they had lost voltage control here and there, a lot of increased voltage conditions, and then towards the last couple of seconds, so the entire event took place in about 26 seconds from the time when things lost control to the complete outage. It involved separating, exporting power to France, which increased the problem. It involved things tripping before they were supposed to. The entire thing was something that was avoidable, but apparently a lot of things were. It was a comedy of errors. So I do remember the day that it occurred, and the first thing everybody said is photovoltaics, renewable energy, whatever. And that even made the news and the articles. And I was like, okay, I want to wait and see what the RCFA looks like, assuming that there was going to be an RCFA. So there's two reports that are right on the edge, meaning that they actually had all the data up front. That is the Spanish government, and the other group was REE, or their actual operator, the people that take care of making sure that power stays online, and are the ones who coordinate between all the power plants to make sure that there's enough energy available in the grid. So the final event that had occurred involved the fact that the energy mix was what it had been for a while. So during the day, under lightly loaded conditions as they were, when the cost of electricity had dropped significantly, the utilities prefer to have only so much what they call synchronous generation, which are the large coal-fired nuclear gas turbine type generators. So they had a very low level of that, and about 40% of the makeup of the total power was photovoltaics, or PV. It was a beautiful day, apparently, throughout all of Spain. The weather was nice, and why not? Okay, so the idea is to, from a business perspective, when the cost of electricity drops tremendously, you want to cut your costs. The lowest cost electricity is through alternative energy. I don't care what you hear on the news. It's all of the studies, all of the work, everything else, that is the lowest cost. So especially when it comes to fuel. Now, we'll talk another time about what the actual impacts are in those areas. I've got a very specific background there. So we get past that. So the immediate response was, it's PV, photovoltaics. It's wind, it's all this stuff causing the problems. Well, it was this, it was that. Oh, look, our grid's unstable because of all these conditions. Well, the studies immediately identify that that is not the case. One study points the finger at the synchronous generation, but what it really comes down to the operators. So the initial report from the third group is called ENSO-E, which is the European operator group. What's biasing all of the reports is about $3 billion, or 3 billion euros, I should say, of direct power generation losses. Okay, so people are looking where to collect the money from. So everybody's pointing fingers. And if you look at the operator reports, they kind of bend it and point the finger at generation, and the Spanish point the finger at everybody, the Spanish government. The Europeans come out and say the comedy of errors bit. And then, of course, we had to have FERC and NERC get involved, as well as a number of study groups, including one that I asked to be on in IEEE, which is specifically looking at this. And in every case, I can tell you there is no formal root cause analysis going on. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of things being thrown around. Most of the data involves timeline. Then the FERC-NERC report identifies that we are not in as much danger as that area because our rules in place will prevent what happened there. What did come out from the renewable side is that the renewable end of the industry, in particular storage, provides a more robust, a more resilient, meaning of the ability to react and do everything else. At this conference, everybody was talking about how we have to do grid forming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Grid forming means to have the system work the grid, kind of like a synchronous generation versus what they do now, which is grid following, which means that they follow what's going on and provide power. The other thing I noted was especially at the IEEE conference, with the thousands upon thousands of engineers present, especially the ones who were giving opinions on the capabilities of alternative energy, et cetera, there was nobody from the alternative energy industry there other than myself. And the papers and reports and everything else rely primarily on things like simulation versus real data. So they're using synthetic data to make real world decisions based upon stuff they've seen and heard on the news and on the internet. All of which are fantastic resources. I'm being sarcastic here, that we should drive our lives and lifestyles by. It's just ridiculous. So, having read the actual reports, having done certain things to see what's going on, I can tell you that 99% of the papers presented were absolutely wrong. The one paper that nailed it, there were some that were pretty good. On the IEEE side, and as a matter of fact, I've been invited to be counterpoint in a webinar from one of those where I disagreed with some of the stuff during our working group meeting, but I disagree from the standpoint that there was some leaping to conclusions. And in my RCFA presentation, I talk about the worst people to have involved in an RCFA are engineers, and there's a reason. It has to do with fixed. Engineers tend to get very fixed on their conclusions, and it's hard to convince them that their personal opinions or biases don't meet the data. So I'm going to be recommending that a true RCFA is done. Right now, the ENSO-E European standard, because none of them even mention the word root cause analysis. They might say root cause, but the root cause is finger pointing, which is something you do not do in root cause failure analysis. That is in the report. If you've got a good understanding of Spanish, I highly recommend you go and read the reports if that's of interest, because they're kind of fun. But neither here nor there. So we're not done yet. And the reason I've got a concern there is because all of these reports that are being done included some discussions within the working groups and presenters that said that wanted to push their concept, their studies, their wanting to get grants. So this all has to do with money. People want their grants to talk about grid forming, and basically said that wind, solar, and energy storage controls were not capable of certain things, which they are actually capable of. So I brought up a point and I said, hey, wait a minute, that's incorrect. You can actually do that with our power, with modern power generation. Maybe not the early stuff prior to 2000, whatever, but all the new controls, you can absolutely accept VARs and do certain other things, all techie stuff. And got the response basically from the people making decisions and writing the standards that they kind of see alternative energy as a black box, and that is literally the term that came out of the meeting. I suggest that we probably want to get some people that are familiar with the controls and how alternative energy operates on the grid in order to get input so that we can make sure the code meets what we need so we can take full advantage of the full capabilities of that energy resource now. So I'll talk some other time about the politics related to all of this stuff, because if you're watching the news, depending on what channel you watch, and we'll talk about that down the road too, whatever channel you watch, the results are that you get very biased and very, very false information regardless of the side. And I've got some hilarious stories that go around that, but neither here nor there. So the Iberian Peninsula thing, the final trigger was a transformer tripping offline that happened to be interconnected with a whole bunch of photovoltaic sites. It tripped offline due to damage on a piece of equipment, and that caused everything to shut down, kind of like the Heathrow Airport thing. They knew about the problems, but nobody acted on it because it was just maintenance stuff. And oh my gosh, they're always calling bad stuff. What could possibly go wrong? It hasn't in the past. So in this case, they had all the settings were wrong in a bunch of plants that they're aware of right now. And like I said, I'm waiting for an RCFA, but here's the conclusions. A lot of plants were not set to code. A power generator that was supposed to come online to provide synchronous generation was not contracted or made available. So when the one plant went down, it did not come up and take the load. That caused a voltage rise. Then they started making corrections for frequency oscillation, which ended up increasing the voltage until they hit a threshold. Now they didn't. They were approaching a 435,000 volt threshold, and plants were set wrong and started tripping off. And those are a combination of all style plants. So the alternative energy, which could have ridden through most of this, was not set to ride through any of it. So basically the comedy of errors. France drops offline, causing all of a sudden the voltage to shoot up to over 440 kilovolts, 440,000 volts. The trip line was 435,000 volts. Things started tripping off so quickly. They started having a frequency oscillation that was forced. It was oscillating against the rest of Europe and the other areas. So all of a sudden, the Iberian Peninsula became an absolute island for power, and then they hit the zero voltage condition, meaning that all the generation had disconnected. Everything worked to do what it was supposed to do to protect other parts of the grid, but because things were set incorrectly, thresholds were wrong, and they did certain actions that that would enforce the problem or help generate the problem, they lost the peninsula. So right now, the probably the one that's damning everybody, the Spanish one, the preliminary reports from NSOE are following along with the Spanish report more or less, but they said that they had their preliminary report. They're doing more analysis. One of the people that was presenting at the conference was involved in the Spanish analysis, and he has the similar conclusions to me, which I just wrote up in Reliable magazine. So I will share that on LinkedIn, and in this, when I release this, it will be in the notes, the link to that article, so you can get more details if you want. I'm trying to stay in the non-technical side, and I'm going over the promised 15 minutes, about 5 minutes. So we'll end here. We'll just say I'm going to return to this at another time, and next week I'm going to rant about synthetic data, and I'm going to do that while we drink while we test the coffee from shop floor coffee. I'll have more details on that next week. And with that, I'm heading off to another conference. I have to get those presentations ready. We will catch you on the flip side.